Hello, Grace Church. It's Landon Galloway, one of the pastors here at Grace. I'm so excited to be with you and bring you today's version of Grace Notes. I was reading the parable recently of the rich man and Lazarus, and let me just kind of read the introduction to that parable for you. It's found in Luke chapter 16, verse 19 to 21. Now there was a rich man who was dressed in purple and fine linen and lived in luxury every day. At his gate laid a beggar named Lazarus, covered with sores, and longing to eat what fell from the rich man's table. And even the dogs came and licked his sores. These two men are contrasted greatly. The rich man was wearing purple garments, which was the color of royalty. He had on linen undergarments. He even had on fancy underwear, is what the Bible was saying. Everything about him was luxurious. He ate at had a feast for every single meal. So he lived, the word for gates, it said that he lived behind his gates, or Lazarus was laying at the gates. That word for gates is not the gates for a home, but the gates for a city. So the mental picture is that of a palatial mansion, a man who's eating and drinking well and dressed fine. And then he's contrasted to a man who was laid at the gates of the rich man's house. I want you to notice that Lazarus was so incapacitated that he wasn't able to go there himself. He was laid there. He's passive in this. Someone else had to pick him up and put him there to beg. He's starving. He's practicing what would be a dehumanizing act of having to beg just for some scraps, just for some crumbs. And he's covered up by sores, and the dogs would come to lick him. And first of all, that makes you unclean according to Jewish law and custom. But the other thing I would like for you to notice, though, is that the dogs were doing that out of compassion, that the dogs had more compassion on Lazarus than the rich man did. But so their whole life is this contrast. The rich man has everything, Lazarus has nothing. In fact, one rabbi who lived around the time that the New Testament was written, he said that there were three things that gave a man no life. A man who was unclean, a man who had to beg for food, and a man who had a nagging wife. Well, we know he was unclean because the dogs were licking his sores. We know that he was begging for scraps. We don't know his marital status, but 2 out of 3 in this case is certainly bad. Lazarus is presented as this opposite of the rich man. But I want to draw your attention to one final detail before we conclude today. What is the rich man's name? No one knows, but we know the name of the poor man, Lazarus. And the name Lazarus simply means the one that God helps. The one that God helps. I find it very interesting that Scripture doesn't even record the name of the rich man who had everything, but does record the name of the poor man who was faithful to God and ended up spending eternity with God. It doesn't matter how much you have or how little you have. It doesn't matter if you've been advantaged in life or disadvantaged in life. It doesn't matter if you were born with a silver spoon in your mouth or like one of those sporks from Taco Bell, the plastic ones that's a spoon. It doesn't matter which one you were born with. What does matter is, does God know your name? And if He knows your name, you can be confident that He's always there to help you and He's always there to be by your side. Our world places a lot of emphasis on status and wealth and who's who, but God places a lot of emphasis on faithfulness and being righteous before Him. So no matter where you are today, just remember, God knows your name and He is there to help you. Hey, thanks for tuning in today. We'll see you next time on Grace Notes.